Friends, Lord Krishna tells us here, I am doing all of this, he says, projecting the world and taking the world back inside. Do I suffer all through these actions, the Lord questions? Not at all. They do not bind me, Lord Krishna says, at all. I am ever free because, he says, I am detached. So, what do we have here? He says here, the Bhagavad. That means make for bondage. It does not make for bondage for me. Lord Krishna says, he says why? He says, Dasinavat asinam. I am indifferent, he says, to all these actions. He says that actions are going on, but I am not very much involved in it. That sense of detachment is there. Asattam teshu karmasu. I am detached to those actions. He gave us an example earlier in an earlier verse where he says that space represents him and the air and the wind represents us. Think about it. That air and wind is a wrong space. But that space is not a part. That is what Lord Krishna is saying. That space represents me, and the wind and the air represents all of us. And so that is his example. And that to me is a divine example. And we can also have the same situation, he says here. We can do plenty of work in any sense that we want. In an organization, for the country, for the world, it doesn't matter. But when you have this type of action, he's saying that you have to be detached. And he said this way back in chapter 3. We are in chapter 9, I'm reading here. So, if you can work in a spirit of detachment, he's saying to us that we can be free. Because that detachment will make us free. We don't get into bondage. You know, Mahatma Gandhi called this book Anasakti Yoga. This is a book of detachment. And you think about it. Anytime you're attached to anything, it doesn't matter. It could be food, clothing, whatever. Anytime you are attached, eventually it will lead you to unhappiness. And that unhappiness is because of attachment. So that is what he's saying here, but he's just saying it in richer language for us. So normally work binds, he says, but that work should not really bind us and keep us in bondage. Because it need not do that. So there's another aspect to everything he says here. If you develop spiritual awareness, he's telling us, then that work will cease to be an instrument of bondage. So Krishna says, Udasinavat asinam asaktam teshu karmasu. In all these actions that I do, I am not attached to anybody, to all people. You know, there's a story in the Mahabharata, and you will find that it is Lord Krishna's story, really. And he was perfectly detached. So he was very active. In fact, he was involved in hundreds of events, all. So, but he didn't have any sort of attachment to anything. So, even to his own people, the Yadavas, he wasn't attached to them. So when they became power mad and very wicked, he said to the people, he said, these fellows, they're going to cause a lot of trouble, these Yadavas, and these were his own people. And he was admonishing them and not be a part of them. So he saw before his very eyes here the whole Yadav race. He belonged to that race. But he saw how the history of that race will bring them down. And it did. because they were all slaughtered and killed, and kings came down from the throne and so forth, but he was never king, because that is not what he wanted. He wanted to be detached from everything. So he remained, and Krishna talked about now, he remained absolutely free. And that kind of detachment you can see in Sri Krishna's life as well. And what he says here is what he was in his life. And so in this nature of his divinity, you and I, my friends, are really divine. But what we need, as he always says in the Bhagavad Gita, you may have a few people who are trying to realize me. But he tells us here, we need to put in some effort. And if we put in the effort, then we're going to start to understand our own divinity. And then we're going to understand the divinity around us. So here, I don't want to take up much time, we're near to 12 here. But I want to leave you here, and in the next verse, he's going to tell us, by his reasoning here of my all power. And the word that he uses here is prakriti, nature. And nature produces all of this. But what he says also, you're going to have the moving and the unmoving. And the world, the wheels of this world here, he's going to tell us, they're wrong. But it's going to continue because of this. He is presiding over this entire world in all activities of Prakriti. Prakriti is a part of being, as I said before, and that is my Sakti. I just want to make one point, and I'm going to bring this point back. You see, in Hinduism, you have what you call Shiva and Shakti. You have Brahman and you have Maya or Shakti. Shakti means power. Here is the thing that we need to understand in Hinduism. You see, we have come from what you call Ekam, one. Ekam Bahusyam. And in the Upanishad it tells that. So we have come from this one, and we are many here. But the point is, we will go back to that one. But you see, we all have what you call consciousness or Atman. But it's one. In fact, in our class, and he really made a point when she used the word collective consciousness. And that is the conglomeration of consciousness, the collectiveness of consciousness. But you think about it. Can you divide consciousness? Can you separate consciousness? No, you can't. You see, that is where the Hindus were really far ahead. Because what we're saying, what you have, I have, we all have the same thing, and that is collectively. So when we deal with human beings, we have to deal with them collectively. And understand also that each human being has that divinity. And that divinity there, that consciousness, that Atma, that is love. And we can't get away from that. No matter how you think of a person. You know, sometimes people laugh at me. Even in my meeting last week, when I used the word rehabilitate. Yes, you can, my friends. You can rehabilitate people. Some people, it's very, very difficult. But you have to catch them in the right place and at the right time. And sometimes you can do that. And I can tell you, I have done it. Because I was in management where I had a really difficult employee and all the managers gave up on him. And that person, they put him in my department to work, and they said, Jai, you try with him. You have a lot of patience, compassion, love, and all this stuff. And I took him, and they had his file. It was a big file like this. And the top letter there, anything that he does wrong, I can get rid of him. But none of them before me got rid of him. And this guy has been there for about 30 years. So they want me to get rid of him. So I didn't take that route. I went in the other way to rehabilitate him. Let me make it short. That guy turned out to be my best worker in the department. But you see what happens in life, sometimes we're led by people who with no sort of understanding, and they pull you also. And when they pull you, you can't lift yourself. Like Krishna said in Gita, in chapter 6, you have to raise yourself by yourself. And I wasn't telling this guy Hinduism, but I was telling him, I said, everybody thinks you're a failure. but you're not a failure. But you're acting because they're giving you all negative stuff. So sometimes we have to look back and see what Krishna is saying here, because you have the best sociology, you have the best psychology here, all interpersonal relationships, how you get along with people. Sometimes we have a group of singers. Well, all these singers may be good, but one may be a little. But so that one, not because you have a little more than the others, it means that, you must show off in it. No, help the others also. And that is the same thing that we have to do. And this is what Krishna is telling us. We are all consciousness. You see, that's universal love. There can be no higher moral or ethic than that. You can't find it in any sociology book. All the books that you're reading in college, you try to find that, and you will not find what this Gita is giving us here today, or anytime I read it. You can't find it in no book, no textbook will you find this type of sociology and psychology that we have here. So my friends, I would encourage you to continue to read. We're in chapter 9 here, and I've taken just one verse today, and that is chapter 9, verse 9. So if you want to read ahead, I know some of you are doing it, especially my class, but continue to read it, and then one day you will say, well, yeah, we have the best book here in the world, this book here. Believe me. And this book here will take you back to God. This book here is the most powerful. Why do you think these Western writers, when they're writing, which book are they going to? Emerson, Thoreau, Walt Whitman, Carlyle from England, Goethe from Germany. Where do they go? Right here, my friends. And if when they go here and they want to go further, they go to the Upanishads. And we are Hindus and we don't go here. We have it right here, believe me. And continue, and if we have one or two, that's all right. But I want you to come out so that you can impart this knowledge. When I leave, I want you to impart this knowledge. And it has to be done sincerely. And Krishna says, if you do this sincerely, you will come straight to me. May the blessings of Almighty God always be with you.